Good morning. It is time for just a word from the Word. Happy Tuesday. Our passage is just a smidgen longer than I normally read, but we're reading from Mark chapter 6, verses 53 through 56, and I'm reading in the New King James Version. When they had crossed over, speaking of Jesus and his disciples, they came to the land of Gennesaret and anchored there. And when they came out of the boat, immediately the people recognized him, ran through that whole surrounding region, and began to carry about on beds those who were sick to wherever they heard he, Jesus, was. Wherever he entered, into villages, cities, or the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might just touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched him were made whole. I want to talk for just a couple minutes this morning about the simple power of your testimony. So this is Mark chapter 6. If you go back to Mark chapter 5, and if you listen to Brother Gurley, he touched on it a little bit this morning, but from a different perspective than what I'm going to be talking about. But Jesus and his disciples ended up in a place where there was a man bound by chains, but more than bound by chains, he was bound by Satan. Satan told Jesus that there were a legion of demons within this man. You know the story. The demons begged Jesus to be cast into the swine that were near. Jesus did. The man was delivered, gloriously delivered. But because the demons destroyed the swine, the people in that area were, to put it nicely, were angry. Mark 5 says that they prayed that Jesus would leave. And boy, is there a message in that. But when this delivered man talks to Jesus and says, "Can I go with you?" Jesus said no. The Lord ever told you no? Jesus said no, even though it would have been a good thing. He told him no. And the reason why Jesus told this delivered gentleman no was the next instruction that Jesus gave him. Jesus looked at this man that had been gloriously delivered by the power of God, and he says, "Go tell your testimony." That's it. Go tell your testimony. Now, the demons that were in this man had destroyed some of the economy of the hood. And yet Jesus says, "Go tell your testimony." So the man who possibly encountered an awful lot of resistance at first, despite the glory that God had done in his life, told his testimony. So that by the time we get to the end of Mark chapter 6, and Jesus goes back to that very same spot, the man who had been gloriously delivered, the man whose demons who had destroyed part of the economy of that situation, because that man shared his testimony. And apparently he didn't just tell it to his neighbors, he told it everywhere, because Mark 6 says that every city and every village that Jesus went into, he was received. And people were there to reach out to him. People were there to touch him. And because of the Gadarene man that had been gloriously delivered, his testimony made room for Jesus to do even greater works. This morning's just a word from the Word is simply this: there is power in your testimony. When you and I share the glory of God, what the Lord has done in our lives, how he has moved miraculously, we give glory to God. We've experienced his blessings and we're sharing it. But do you and I realize the room that that gives for Jesus to do even greater? It is the simple power of your and my testimony. Our testimonies give room to Jesus so that he can do greater works in those around us. So this morning's just a word from the word. Don't stifle your testimony. Don't keep your testimony hidden. Don't put your testimony in a box and hide it in a closet. Tell of the glorious works of God in your life, in your heart, on your job, in your church. Tell of the goodness of God, who knows that Jesus would use that testimony to do even greater works in your community. So tell your testimony. Don't be shy. Don't have to be hateful. Don't have to be pushy. But share your testimony. There's power in it to allow Jesus to do greater. This has been just a word from the word. God bless you. Have a beautiful day, and Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow morning.